This would be a response to Rozeboosye in his Logic Doesn't Play Nice video. I'm responding because I'm the one he sent packing or whatever it is he changed it to. I couldn't quite understand that. But I'm only doing this because he's changing what he's the best way I can say it, he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. So I'm going to start at 6 minutes 17, and this will explain why I'm responding.
We can, of course, once we are in existence, once we're dealing with an existing sentient being that is suffering, we can address its suffering, we can ameliorate it, we can treat it, we can sometimes even eliminate it, we can do our best, definitely. And if you care...
If you care. Now, you had stated to me that just for the sake of argument, and even if it is just for the sake of argument, you said you don't care about the suffering of others. So that's the whole thing. If you're going to state that, even for the sake of argument, that you don't care about the suffering of others, there's nowhere to go. We're done. But now you're saying, yeah, if you care, you're going to want to do something. And that's perfectly rational, to see others suffering and know that that could just as easily be you suffering. Therefore, you're going to want to do something about it, because it doesn't seem fair. Right? You just said, if you care, you're going to want to alleviate the suffering. But you said, just even if for the sake of argument, you don't care about the suffering of others. So which is it? Either you care or you don't care. You have to care. I'll go ahead and respond to the rest. That's basically why I'm responding. You said you don't care. Now you're saying you have to care in order to want to alleviate suffering. Care is not irrational.
Then I suggest that that's what you will be doing. When you come across anything that is suffering, you will do your best to try and make things better for it. That's what empathy leads you to do. But maybe, ultimately, we cannot completely eliminate it, and that is hard to swallow.
But maybe we can. The word maybe, maybe we can, maybe we can't. So, using the word maybe doesn't work.
That is very hard to swallow. It might even lead you to...
Even if there was a chance that we couldn't eliminate it completely, we can still try.
Conclude, if you are sufficiently fixated on suffering and pain and harm and so on, they might even lead you to conclude that existence is therefore intolerable.
Yeah, why not? People are, sentient beings are suffering, and they didn't have a choice in the matter. So that's intolerable.
And even then, even if that is your conclusion, it still isn't logically valid to conclude that non-existence is therefore preferable. Non-existence isn't anything, including preferable, or worse, or better, or anything else compared to existence. Non-existence, literally, logically, rationally, is actually not an alternative to existence.
Yes, it is. And it's going to be. We're going to not exist in the future. We didn't exist in the past. And in those states of non-existence, there is no harm being done. And you're saying that's not better. We don't need to be here. The only reason we're here is because people have a notion in their head that we do need to be here. And when we're here, there's harm. Sure, there's pleasures, but there's harm being imposed.
There is no alternative to existence.
Yes, there is. We're going to die. And we will be non-existent. We were non-existent before we were brought into the world. And there's no harm being done. Only sentient beings can be harmed. That's what the argument is saying. If you want to continue this existence for as long as we can, you're going to continue harm for as long as we can. There's no reason, there's no rational reason to bring a sentient being into this world. There's no reason. No good reason.
You exist, and that's the end of it. There is no alternative to your existence. This also applies to hypothetical future beings. There is no alternative to their existence. Within the hypothetical in which you posit their existence, they exist. And once that is the case, once that context has been established, there is no alternative. This is not a question of not caring. This is not a question of not giving a damn. This is a question of taking reality for what it is. And there is no way out of that.
The reality is you can choose not to procreate if you're rational about the situation. There is an alternative to procreating, not procreating.
You have to accept reality for what it is. Doesn't mean that reality is hunky-dory and everything is grand, and that you shouldn't do your best to address the problems that do arise within reality.
But if you don't care, why should you even address them? You don't care. As long as your life is hunky-dory, who cares about the suffering of others? You have to care at least a little bit about the suffering of others if you're going to want to alleviate suffering. You've already said that.
That was never said by anybody. But it does mean that you need to accept that reality is what it is what you find it as. After that, do your best. Do what you can to make reality better.
Well, part of that, doing what you can, you're going to exclude not procreating as part of doing what you can. Do what you can, but keep procreating. Make sure the harm keeps going.
Even if it is only an improvement from utter rock bottom to desperation, that's an improvement. And that's something.
So you're going to bring somebody into the world that's going to be possibly very bad, just so you can make it not quite as bad. Why? Why is that rational behavior? To bring someone into a bad situation so you can make it a little better.
We've validly tried to aim for it. But antinatalism, if it is based on logical abortions such as the imposition argument and risk equations, is a dud.
No, it's not. You have to recognize, even if your life is hunky-dory, you have to recognize that sentient beings are being imposed on. Even if you don't feel imposed on, you have to recognize that others are being imposed on and care about that situation.
It's a damn squib. It's going.
Oh, in the risk equation, yeah, it is a risk. You don't know what's going to happen when you procreate. It could be really bad. It could be just a little bit bad. But in any case, there's going to be room for improvement in a person's situation. You're putting a sentient being into a harmful existence that's going to need improvement. It's going to have to satisfy needs. And you're procreating without a rational reason.
No way. And I don't care how many professional philosophers are behind this idea. If they're behind this idea, they are idiots too. And that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and go to the beginning.
If anybody is still suffering under the delusion that antinatalism is a rational position, I think you need to go and check out how I sent one of the cult members packing the other day. I didn't so much send them packing as they decided to go home and take away the ball. The thing is,
something about warming up a bottle.
When that happened, their parting shot to me was, well, why should I waste my time with somebody who simply doesn't care?
Exactly. If you're going to, even just for the sake of argument, you're going to say you don't care about the suffering of others, the conversation's over. But now later on, as I've already pointed out, you say if you care, you're going to want to do something. If you don't care, why do anything? If you don't care, why do anything? Just go about your life, go about your hunky-dory life, and that's it. If you're going to say you don't care, the conversation's over. But later on you say, well, yeah, if you care, you're going to do something. If you don't care, what's motivating you to do something?
Good question. Why should you waste your time with somebody who doesn't care? What, of course, you cannot continue to claim in that situation is that your position is therefore rational.
Why is that irrational to disengage with someone who doesn't care? You're saying a rational person is going to keep talking to somebody that doesn't care. I mean, the next step is make you care. That's the only thing I can do. But if you're going to, just for the sake of argument, say you don't care, I'm going to say you have to care. And later on you say, yeah, if you care, you're going to do something. So, for the sake of argument, do you care or don't you care?
Because it is obviously not a rational decision that led you to abandon this dialogue.
Again, why is that? It's irrational to disengage from someone who is going to say, even for the sake of argument, they don't care. If you don't care, what's going to motivate you to do something for somebody else?
What led you to abandon the dialogue was anger and frustration.
No, it was a rational choice. If you're just going to say, for the sake of argument, you don't care, it doesn't make me angry. It's saying the conversation is futile now. I can't have a debate with someone who doesn't care.
Which is understandable, because when I am discussing certain aspects of antinatalism, I can come across as extremely callous and uncaring. And of course, an ideology that claims to be built on empathy, for example, will find that incredibly hard to stomach. But here's the problem.
I find it, not worthy of continuing. It's not that it's hard to stomach. Just if you're going to say that, you're another reason why we shouldn't procreate. Because when people procreate, they create people that don't care.
They don't just claim to be based on empathy and caring. They claim that their position is rational.
Yeah, is it irrational to care about the suffering of other beings just like me? You're saying that's irrational? And
even if we accept the reality of the situation, that any value judgment is subjective to some extent at least, and that
either it's subjective or it's not. If to some extent, then to some extent it's objective, and we're talking about objective things. The object of our thought is other sentient beings. It's not something that only exists in the mind. There are actual sentient beings suffering. It's the object of the thought.
So far as rationality even applies to it, and it does, the way it should be applied is in service of value judgments, in service of a value judgments, value system. If you do that, rationality can be applied correctly.
Okay.
But then we need to look at the underlying principles, the rational arguments or the quasi-rational arguments that are presented in the service of antinatalism. And if we then find them wanting, the only valid thing left to do is to ditch them and remove them from the construct that is antinatalism.
Actually, if we find them wanting, not if we don't find them wanting. Anyhow.
And this is a problem for the antinatalists, because two of their most fundamental cornerstones.
Okay, yeah, we're going back to the imposition and the risk equation. Yeah, if you see people suffering involuntarily, they are brought into the world not through choice. They're suffering because somebody else decided to bring them into existence. That is an imposition. The risk equation. When you bring somebody else into the world, you're drawing straws for somebody else. You're taking a risk for somebody else. And that's all there is to it. So, anyhow, I think that's enough. Thanks for watching, if you did.